Today we are looking at Is Everyone Really Equal? Chapter 2, Critical Thinking and Critical Theory. There is an accompanying PDF lecture with this lecture video, and one of the very first pages of it is your vocabulary to practice that you are learning from this chapter that is listed at the beginning of page 23. So I recommend printing your PDF notes so you can fill in what you think these terms mean before reading and after reading and why they are significant to help you with the materials in the class. Basically, the chapter starts off talking about critical thinking and critical theory as an academic practice. In actuality, the one that I am most used to using is critical race theory, which takes critical theory a step further and analyzes race as a key component to critical thinking. Basically, there are some myths we hold about knowledge production, that everything that we learn in school is factual, or everything that we learn in general is factual, and that these facts are objective. They are given to us by scholars that remove themselves from the analysis and the work and are just presenting this is how it was in that time period, or this is how the science experiment turned out to be. And basically, this chapter is asking you to critically think about those held assumptions and challenge them. Because guess what? Knowledge production is not objective. Knowledge is a social construction in general. And when I say the term social construction, I mean we give these items or ideas knowledge based on how we are taught as young children. Knowledge in general is fused with ideology. It is not objective. Even if we are mathematicians and we're working with numbers and it's the most removed you could get from some kind of emotion, there is still a bias implied with the person conducting the mathematical work, because the reason behind why that person decided to become a mathematician could change the way they approach their work with the numbers. So nothing is objective, basically. Some ideologies include social, historical, political, anything to do with sexuality or gender. These are all ideological topics that infuse our knowledge production, and they can give knowledge meaning at any given moment in time or in history. So one thing that the book does point out as it is discussing, well, here's knowledge and here's how it's different, is that lived experiences are knowledge productions as well, and especially the lived experiences of Black, Indigenous people of color. So I was really excited at the top of 26, of page 26, all the theorists that we discussed in the other textbook, social justice, not all of them, but the top three are mentioned here in Is Everyone Really Equal? So we have Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber that are all discussed in very, very brief, like one sentence here. But you will have more information from your reading of the other chapters in social justice. And there's also a little bit of information about movement knowledge. So the chapter is giving you a little bit of grounding of how critical theory in general developed as a school of thought in academic spaces. So it speaks about the philosophers, like I mentioned, moves into this idea of positivism and the Frankfurt School, then the big social movements and civil rights movements of the 1960s, Chicano Power Movement, that's my movement, and contemporary issues and movements that are not discussed in this chapter. And it's probably because of the year that this was published, or maybe it's just a failing for this book, but I brought up in your PDF notes the issues of Black Lives Matter movement, say her name, say their name. So keep that in mind as you're reading this chapter. At the bottom of 27, the authors explain the goal of this book is rooted in critical theory, and there are 5 different factors that they are trying to teach you as a reader and as a scholar. And I've listed them in the PDF lecture. I'm not going to go into depth here in the video lecture. Basically, you need to complete this chapter with this understanding that knowledge is socially constructed. And there's a really good example, almost like a story. A lot of the examples are based in fact, but they are told as if it's a story to get you to relate to it. So to explain how knowledge is socially constructed, they use the example of Christopher Columbus, quote, discovering America. And they ask you to critically think about this social perspective and wonder what this myth about Christopher Columbus that we hold close to us actually says about indigenous peoples and about the history of North America, and why would this myth continue to be taught? What is gained through this information? And then after questioning all that, the authors say that the final step in knowledge production is finding ways to change the curriculum to show a more nuanced and realistic view of the situation, that it's not just a black and white or binary knowledge production. And in fact, there's complexities in terms of how this history is perpetrated and made to believe and be taught as if it's an objective fact when we know it's not. Country cannot be founded or discovered and live there and still continue to live there. The final section of this chapter talks about James Banks' knowledge typography. And I found this especially interesting because it is very similar to Dr. Tara Yoso's community cultural wealth article and theory that she puts forth with an emphasis on critical race theory. And I've listed these 5 in the PDF lecture. There's personal and cultural knowledge, popular knowledge, mainstream academic knowledge, school knowledge, and transformative academic knowledge. And the book does a really good example of defining these for you. And I don't think I need to do it here. But if you have questions, of course, reach out to me. It's rather self-explanatory when you're reading it. I think the ones that interest me the most actually right now, it's this idea of popular knowledge, of how groups of people can gain what they think is common sense knowledge from mainstream media or news or something that you've heard again and again, and then it becomes a part of your life because you're so used to it and you can't think of something outside of that. And transformative academic knowledge is basically the right now, and in terms of what this book and these authors and myself are asking you to potentially sit in an uncomfortable place / space as you start to question maybe these truths that you've always held as this is it. This is my reality. And now it's getting turned upside down. There's a really good study that is depicted on page 31 and 32 that shows the difference of how groups of people, when asked the same question, can answer it differently based on their social realities. So I highly recommend you look at the table, the figure 2.1 on page 32. And in general, I want to end with how the authors ended it in the chapter when they said, "Of course, we have a right to our own opinions, but there will be no personal or intellectual growth for us if we are not willing to think critically about them. We urge our readers to remember this as we proceed to raise some challenging and politically charged issues." So see if you can be willing to really self-examine your opinions and why you hold them, and challenge yourself to think about them differently and or listen to someone else's opinions and listen to someone else's